All right, kids, Mike Watkins, HurricaneTrack.com, HurricaneAnalytics.com with a quick update this afternoon on Dorian. Winds are up to 150 miles per hour. The storm appears to continue to intensify in satellite imagery. As you can see from just looking at this, there's a super round eye right in the middle of the deep convection, and the circle, the CDO around the storm is only getting more defined, wider, darker in color, colder cloud tops, and in fact, this last few images you can actually see, it should show up here. Look at this. There's going to be this darkening swirl that kind of moves into the middle. Those are super cold cloud tops, about as cold as you can get in the Atlantic Ocean, and that means that there's obviously a ton of upward motion. The forecast track continues to take it in this general direction toward the northwestern Bahamas. After that, there are some differences in what the models show, but for the most part, there are no longer any specific models that are showing a U.S. Florida landfall, at least not right now. That could still change, essentially, as long as the storm is south of you and east of you. I think you'd be concerned if you're in Florida, but most of the reliable guidance now shows that at least potential of making landfall in the U.S. is, or at least in Florida, has gone down a little bit. So let's take you over to the European model track. This just finished a few minutes ago. Now, what you're looking at is the entire track. So this is where the storm is right now. Here in 12 hours here, 24 hours here, and then by 36 hours, so this is still a full day and a half in the model, that it just then approaches and makes landfall, or close to makes landfall, in the Bahamas. After that, though, notice this number here, 72. That means that from basically a day and a half through the next 3 days, on the European model's track, we're going to have a very intense hurricane basically sitting here inside the Bahamas. After that time, steering currents collapse and it starts to move northward slowly, and then after that it actually gets picked up by a trough, and I'm going to go back and show you what that looks like actually now. Yeah, so let's see. Let's go back to the, there we go. So here's what's going on in the atmosphere. Actually, what you're seeing is a water vapor loop in the mid-levels, so we can see a couple of really important features, one of them being this mountain of air that's kind of building in behind the storm. You can see it pushing down on the hurricane, basically, and causing it to move to the west. In fact, that ridge, you can see them kind of extends all the way to here and wraps around it. So this is the current force holding Dorian down. The other issue, though, is that pressures are fairly high on this side of the storm. See where we have that yellow kind of building up there? That indicates dry air in the mid-levels, but also suggests that pressures are higher there. That's what's going to slow the storm to almost a complete halt, is this balance of forces around it. So as high pressure continues to build up here to the east of the, or to the west of the storm, and to the north, it's going to be applying pressure in two directions, basically trapping Dorian. Now the question is, how long is it going to be down there? Because the GFS model shows a little less ridging on top of it over the next 24 to 48 hours, and then shows it escaping out to, or not escaping, but heading north faster than the European model does. And so it's a double. And then if you look up here, there's this yellow kind of river of air that's moving that way. This is eventually going to erode the ridging to the north and to the west of the storm and allow it to pop loose. So that's why you see that kind of weird track from the European model where it just kind of comes in and then pops loose. The European model is seeing more of a stall and than its counterpart, the GFS. And so I'm going to take you through those models real quick and I'll let you see what that looks like. So let's see. No. Hey, I thought I had this figured out, but I guess I don't. Okay, so here's the U.S. model through, let's see. Let's get back to my thing. Okay, here's the U.S. models through 24 hours. Actually, this is all of them except the Euro. For the most part, this is the Canadian model. Yes, they have a model. It's faster than the rest of the models in the sense that it's out ahead of the envelope. But by 24 hours, Most of the models have Dorian about where the European does, although in the European it's closer to here, so it's a little slower than what we're seeing here. Then we add some time to it, if possible. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so in 36 hours here, 2 days here. So now all of these models are basically off of or very close to off of the Bahamas. And then by 72 hours, they're well away from there. So the Euro still shows it down there. The rest of the models, including the Consensus and the UK Met and basically all of them show movement after that. And then as we go out in time, by day 4 or 4 days from now, so Wednesday afternoon, most of the models have it starting to turn away from the United States coast, but then within 120 hours, there's a couple of models now. The HMON, which I would ignore, just totally ignore that. I don't know. It just hasn't performed well ever, if I can remember. But anyway, the H4 Fear also shows it coming into South Carolina, the rest keeping the center off of the coast, at least for now. Now, beyond that time, there's still models showing some impacts to North Carolina. But all this really tells us is, in terms of probability, we've got a little bit of a break here in Florida. It doesn't appear, although there's a few still ensemble members of the European model that are showing continued westward. For the most part now, they're showing a turn in about 2 to 3 days. So the hope is that happens. I mean, there's still uncertainty on either side of the forecast cone, which is essentially just kind of a broader version of this shape. But the probabilities for Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach seeing hurricane force winds have gone way down. They're not zero, but they've gone down very considerably. Really, the only thing we're going to have left to contend with is whether or not we get tropical storm force winds here, because the probability of that actually has gone down a little bit too. So here's the wind radius starting at 8 a.m. this morning. It's a right-handed storm right now, but as over time, let's go ahead and put it into motion here a little bit. Should be going there we go. So 12 hours from now, 24 hours from now, coming into the Bahamas. This is along the Hurricane Center's forecast track. And then by 48, it would be here, and that's what we have for hurricane force winds. And then by 72 hours, notice we still got essentially hurricane or tropical storm force winds from up here in Brevard County all the way down to Martin and just the corner of Palm Beach County. Of course, if there's any deviation at all to the left of that, we would see tropical storm conditions further south. So I expect the Hurricane Center will go ahead and put up some sort of watch, probably a tropical storm watch for the coast of Florida as early as 5 p.m. today, if not later on tonight, because again, this is expected within the next 2 days. So now, if the European forecast were to validate and you kind of back up the storm a little bit and say, all right, well, and that's about where the European has it, let's stop it there. We wouldn't necessarily, even if the storm got a little bit bigger, we wouldn't necessarily see tropical storm conditions here in Florida, and that might be why they're going to hold off maybe another 12 hours or so before they put that watch up, if they do, just to make sure that it's even necessary. Because once those watches go up, official actions get triggered and things like that, and they're not going to want to do that unless it's needed. But at least at the moment, it's probably going to come close enough to trigger some sort of watches or warnings for the east coast of Florida, but not make a direct landfall. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot more to talk about now. It's an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. There are going to be fluctuations in intensity up or down. Some people are convinced that it will become a Category 5. The structure sure looks like it could support it, at least for a time. The hope is, of course, it goes through eyewall replacement cycle or some other fluctuation that keeps it not quite that strong when it reaches the northwest Bahamas. And then we could also get lucky and keep the core of the hurricane off the islands. But, probability says they're going to feel some hurricane force winds no matter what. The question now is, will we here in Florida? And then in the longer period, the question becomes, does it get into the Carolinas or South Carolina or the Outer Banks? And certainly I think the threat and the probability of that, some effects go way up for that part. I also think that the probabilities as you go north in Florida, maybe past Indian River and Volusia and head on up toward Jacksonville and that area, the probabilities have also increased that they'll feel even potentially more effects than we would feel down here in the southeast part of the state. The good news, though, would be that the storm would either be tracking parallel or away from the area on the forecast tracks that have come out today. But again, that can change, so you just have to continue to watch and wait, at least for 2 more days here in southeast Florida, just to make sure that nothing changes to the north of the storm. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. But I'll feel a lot better about it down here when it's past our longitude and it's on its way out. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. Do another update later tonight around probably 10 o'clock. Thanks for watching, and stay prepared. We put our preparations on pause down here. We haven't ended them yet, but we're on pause, and we're going to stay on pause unless we need to press the unpause button. So thanks again. See you at the next update.